Well, good morning. I hope you're all doing well today. I'm going to start off with a brief definition of what I'm calling nano food. Before I do that, I should briefly say that the definition of nanotechnology that we're using is anything that intentionally engineers a product at the nanoscale. To get some idea of just how small the nanoscale is, take a hair off your head, and that's about 50,000 nanometers wide. So we're talking about bits of material, elements that have been engineered to be extremely small. The definitions of what is called nanotechnology vary, but the Food and Drug Administration, which we're talking about mostly products they regulate this morning, uses everything below 1,000 nanometers or 1 micrometer. And so very broadly, nano food describes any food which has been cultivated, produced, processed, manufactured, or packaged using nanotechnology techniques or tools, or to which manufactured nanomaterials have been added. Examples of nano ingredients and manufactured nano ingredients include nanometals like iron, titanium, zinc, and also nanoclays and nanocapsules containing ingredients like coenzyme Q10 or omega-3. Okay, next slide. Nanotechnology is already being used in food production, in food additives, to improve or change food taste and texture, in preservation, and a lot of antibacterial and antimicrobial coatings, though they're largely nanosilver, on bakery and meat products, in carbonated beverage, water bottles and beer bottles now, and also in dietary supplements and other food delivery systems. The International Center for Technology Assessment and the Center for Food Safety and IATP and 8 other groups sued the Food and Drug Administration for failing to regulate nanotechnology in food and other products specifically. Basically, you have a situation where companies are inventing new products, going to the patent office and saying they're all new, they do all new things, and then going back to the FDA and say, no, not really, they're just like everything we've ever looked at. So we've been very concerned because of the special properties of nanomaterials that the Food and Drug Administration develop nanospecific regulations and nanospecific product labeling so that we can actually track what's going on with these substances. When the FDA did not respond to our initial petition, we sued the FDA for failure to respond, and they finally did respond because there was an agreement before a judge that had to be enacted. And the FDA still declines to make mandatory regulations for nanochemicals this time, but they do acknowledge that there are key differences between nanomaterials and their bulk counterparts, and that nanomaterials have potential new risk and may require new testing. And they published new food contact substance and cosmetic ingredient guidances. They basically issued a guidance document that describes the factors that manufacturers need to consider when determining whether the changes in manufacturing process involving nanotechnology affect the identity of the food substance, affect the safety of the food substance, affect the regulatory status of the substance, and warrants a regulatory submission to the FDA. They had earlier, by the way, clarified in 2009 that particle size will be used as a factor in evaluating additives. The magic, if you will, of nanotechnology is that for many nanochemicals, going down to the nanoscale changes the properties of the chemical in a way that a food additive manufacturer may want. In the European Union, members of Parliament are concerned that the European Food Safety Agency is not regulating well enough, and they want measures to be developed and applied to address foods, nanofoods for safety, and they also want their foods to be labeled. That would have gone into law already, but for the fact that it's they're having an argument about cloning that's holding it up. In the U.S., the National Organic Standards Board has recommended that engineered nanoparticles smaller than 300 nanometers be excluded from organics. This is not an accidental measurement. This is the size of particle that can cross a placenta. So if you're worried about nano in food, the main thing you want to make sure doesn't happen is it doesn't get into developing children, and the easiest way to prevent that is to make sure that none of the nanoparticles in food are smaller than 300 nanometers. They've already adopted standards like this, and in the UK, the Soil Association doesn't go as large as the National Organic Standards Board, but it goes up to 200 nanometers and says they can't be in organic. I should have labeled this slide nanoclays. A large number of the products that are already out in commerce are actually nanoclays. Alumina and molite, the first and fourth on the list here, are the most common ones. And alumina is used primarily as a dispersant and food additive, while molite is used as a thickening and anti-caking agent. They've been used in large forms for some time. The change is going to the nanoscale, and you know, it is very hard to actually find out which companies are using nanoscale products. They may be buying it from their supplier and then taking it and using it in films and micro capsulation, and they're also exploring using these nanoclays as nanocomposites, and there are a number of reasons why they want to do it. Down the very last one, zeolites, absorbent. The ability to absorb oxygen and keep oxygen out of products is a way to keep them from spoiling. So to some extent, all of these strategies are ways to keep oxygen, ways to keep carbon dioxide off of or out of the product, or in some cases like beer and sodas, nanoclays are being put into the plastic to keep the carbon dioxide from escaping. We're not saying that this shouldn't be done. We're saying that it should be tested separately as a nano product. The materials that we are even more concerned about are the nanometals used in a variety of foods and food contact substances. Nano silver is one of the largest categories, and we at Center for Food Safety and the Danish Consumers Organization and the Bureau of European Consumers and the Wilson Center, when we go through these products, all of us have slightly different lists of consumer products with nano silver, but totaling them all together, there are now more than 600 products being advertised to consumers as containing nano silver. And many of these products use nano silver as an antimicrobial substance in cutting boards, packaging, and products, even products for children. I'll go to the next slide now, and this is one product that is a nano silver impregnated rubber ducky teething ring. Not what most parents would anticipate being in their teething ring, though this one actually comes from Asia, Hong Kong, and it's labeled. So, but you can find those 600 products I mentioned. They're all either available in stores or through the internet. And this is one that is available both in stores in the US and in the internet. Okay, how do these products get on or into the materials? Many of them are sprayed on or are sprayed on one part of a piece of plastic and laminated. These are taken from the website of a company called Nanotech, based in New York, and they have they've developed these techniques for medical applications, but also for food applications. And these are very tiny nozzles that will spray everything from nano silver to carbon nanotubes to titanium dioxide on a plastic or directly onto the food. This is a slide from Nanotech's website in 2009. They've now taken down this slide. Their CEO tells me they told me in 2009 they had not sold any of their machines for spraying antimicrobials on foodstuffs, and they had not made a decision not to sell the spray and for use on foodstuffs. And now their website advertises that it's ideal for nano suspensions of antimicrobial solutions sprayed onto food products in commercial baking and food manufacturing. And it further boasts that the technology now employs food grade design and construction, and they've hired a vice president just to focus on using their technology in the food business. And they're their most recent newsletter says, in the food industry, we have developed relationships with several large manufacturers who are interested in the advantages of our technology for enhancing the safety of ready-to-eat processed meats via a low-dose coating of antimicrobials, and other manufacturers are interested in cost savings of our cereal in conjunction with the coating of flavors on cereal products. So coming to a meat counter near you and to a Frosted Flakes or whatever kind of flavored cereal you have for breakfast. The next category of a product I want to mention is titanium dioxide. This chart is from a publication called Titanium Dioxide Nanoparticles in Food and Personal Care Products, published in February in Environmental Science and Technology. What's interesting about this this chart is that it shows that there are large amounts of titanium dioxide in food and candy. The good news is that a lot of that titanium is still in the bulk scale, but with products like powdered donuts, which the titanium dioxide is being used to make make the sugar whiter, ironically, and but even in those powdered donuts, about a third of the titanium dioxide is in the nanoscale, which means it doesn't make it whiter, it actually makes it more transparent. So they're just not sorting out the nanoscale from the bulk scale. But it's actually the candy products with the hard outer shells that that the companies want to be shiny, that is containing the most nanotitanium dioxide, and the size of the aggregates in all of these samples ranges between 100 to 300 nanometers, certainly within the range that that we should worry. So whether it's candy or whether it's your coffee cream, you need to assume that it probably has nanotitanium dioxide. Well, why should you worry about that? And I pull out titanium dioxide because so much of it's going into food already. The nano silver is a food contact substance primarily, but the titanium dioxide is what you're going to have the largest amounts of in your stomach. So wanted to look at some of the recent studies that look at what happens when you eat, or in this case, they're all studies of mice and rats, but they're saying that it's the gastrointestinal tract is an important way that you would end up absorbing titanium dioxide, whether it's in drugs that are also coated, or food products, or water and beverages containing titanium dioxide. The challenge is that the studies are finding that these really fine and ultrafine particles go to other parts of the body. And one of the studies that I'm citing here actually has shown an association with Crohn's disease. Other studies have shown that nanotitanium dioxide in mice has been shown to cause tumors in the offspring. Other studies have demonstrated that the small nanotitanium dioxide particles go through the gut and into the lymph tissues surrounding it, where they can cause tumors. So we need more study on all of these nanoparticles, but particularly the ones that are being used most in food and that are the most persistent once they're in your body, like the nanosilver and the nanotitanium dioxide. In the interest of time, I've skipped the nanoZeke, but it's essentially the same discussion. What's needed? We need our regulatory agencies to treat nanomaterials as substances in their own right, recognize that they're different from the bulk materials, that we need to have definitions that are focused on the unique properties of the nanomaterials and the particular application. It may be less of a problem if you have a plastic bottle with a nanoclay between the layers than if you have one where the nanoclay is being used to coat a product that dissolves slowly in the bottle. We need to develop reliable safety assays that are intended to protect the most vulnerable environments in humans. We need to label it, whether it's nano or not, in all applications. And we need to be able to track nanomaterials from cradle to grave. And I believe Steve will actually talk some more about that. There is good research being done now on nanomaterials, but the regulatory agencies, both the FDA and the EPA, which regulates the antimicrobials, have been very slow to act. Part of that's because the Office of Management and Budget in the White House has not wanted them to act. And I'll end at that and turn it over to Steve. Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much for that sobering presentation, Jaydee. And we've already got some good questions. Feel free to pass some more along as we go, and then we'll get to as many as we can at the end. Now I'll pass us on to Steve Suppan at the Institute for Agriculture and Trade Policy.
Thank you, Ben, and thank you, Jaydee, for having made my job a little easier. I'm going to talk about a very specific application or consequence of the unregulated manufacture of nanomaterials, and that's specifically nanomaterials as they appear in soil, nanomaterials as they have been designed in theory for fertilizer, and the effect of both on soil health. So first I'm going to give a real quick overview and a very brief introduction to nanotechnology insofar as it concerns three different elements in the nanomaterials, fertilizer, and soil health complex: DNA, soil bacterium, and ants. Then we're going to talk about why is there an interest in developing nanofertilizers or putting nanomaterials as soil additives. And there are several justifications being used. The one I'm going to be used is from the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, but it's more widely shared among international agricultural research institutes and transnational agribusiness. Then I want to talk very specifically, however briefly, about nanomaterials and soil health. Then talk about a project to develop a so-called intelligent nano fertilizer that will dosify fertilizer only as it's needed to improve efficiency use. Then I want to talk about nanomaterials as fertilizers. They're most likely to appear. That is in the sewage sludge that's called biosolids by the Environmental Protection Agency, and these are currently applied to U.S. agricultural fields. And then I want to talk about an experiment at Duke University where nanosilver is mixed in biosolid slurry, and we want to look at the effects on the microbial biomass and then on nitrous oxide flux, nitrous oxide being an extremely powerful greenhouse gas. Talk a little bit about some of the issues around regulating nanomaterials and biosolids in soil, and then finish up by discussing briefly why IATP has called for a moratorium on engineered nanomaterials in biosolids and their fertilization of fields. So this is literally the Nano 101 from the Nano 101 page of the U.S. Nanotechnology initiative, and for our purposes, the three scale depictions that are important is the scale of DNA, the scale of the carbon nanotubes. I'm sorry, there's four. The scale of the bacterium and then of the ants. Because in some of the discussions of designs of nano fertilizers, the idea is that you can fold DNA in such a way as it will act as a kind of biosensor to communicate to the soil bacterium what is needed in terms of nutrients. And at the same time, we're going to be asking, well, how will those nanomaterials affect the soil bacterium and affect the soil engineers, including ants? Now, in terms of the justification for the use of nanomaterials in fertilizer, the application of nanotechnology to agricultural production is one of the newest tools in the proverbial toolbox to increase crop yields by 50% by 2050 to feed an estimated global population of 9 billion persons without further damaging the natural resource base of agriculture. Now, this formula that I have just given you is called the sustainable intensification of crop production, and the econometric projections and assumptions behind this goal and this description are highly debatable, but we're not going to debate them here. But as you can see, at the very core of this complex of factors for sustainable intensification is the efficiency of input use and increased productivity. So fertilizer efficiency, particularly in chemically intensive agriculture for grain crops, is rather low. Perhaps as much as 50% of nitrogen, for example, is either volatilized as greenhouse gas or it's leached into groundwater. The global supply of chemical fertilizer raw materials is not renewable, and there is little international agricultural research interest and little agribusiness profit in improving or expanding renewable composted fertilizers. And therefore, there is research going on to try to find ways to nanosize fertilizer nutrients and direct them to the nanoscale pores of plants. Now, any discussion of using nanomaterials in agricultural soil must take into consideration its effect on soil health, and particularly the trophic system or the soil feeding chain. And here we have kind of a scheme of that trophic system where plants are deteriorating, They are processed by fungi, bacteria, nematodes, which in turn are getting processed by microarthropods, earthworms, macroarthropods, and all of these then are moving back up into the mineral pool where they will meet with fertilizer. So this is a highly schematic description of the soil feeding chain. Now, FAO has a principle concerning soil for the sustainable crop production intensification. It's a high standard. Quote, sustainable crop production intensification must be managed to enhance soil ecosystems, improving soil health and fertility, and reversing degradation and pollution of the land, unquote. Now, these principles are not binding on FAO members, nor, of course, on the technology developers who use sustainable intensification goals to justify marketing their technology. Now, when tests are done to determine in the laboratory what the effects of various nanomaterials might be on soil health, they usually begin with the poor earthworm. The earthworm is the charismatic species of soil science, and not surprisingly, scientists are interested in whether soil health can be maintained when nanomaterials are added intentionally or inadvertently to soil, and they focus on the health of earthworms. This 14-day experiment here happily reports that the multi-wall carbon nanotubes, so multi-wall carbon nanotubes, did not bioaccumulate in the earthworm. These nanotubes have a broad array of military, industrial, and consumer applications, and it is assumed by the scientists that some of the a portion of nanomaterials in general, but carbon nanotubes in this case, will enter into natural ecosystems because there are no regulatory controls on nanomaterial manufacture or use. And so here you have soil that is moistened with these nanotubes in them, and the report is, well, the earthworms were able to do their job, and the nanotubes did not bioaccumulate in the earthworms. However, there are other reports from scientists indicating great damage to earthworm digestion and soil processing efficiency. So there's far from any scientific consensus on this issue. Now, perhaps definitely less explored, but equally important, if not more, are the soil microarthropods depicted in this photo from a 2010 European Commission report on soil health and soil biodiversity. Because soil health, even schematically described, is so complex, there are no laws anywhere protecting soil health that are directly dedicated to protecting soil health. At the Rio Plus 20 conference last year, a briefing paper estimated that globally about a quarter of all soil was extremely degraded. So even though these microarthropods are not as charismatic as the earthworms, they must remain healthy to perform essential soil building and soil regulating functions. And thus far, as far as I know, there's not any scientific investigation of how these little creatures would be affected by their contact with nanomaterials. On a somewhat idealistic scale, at least in my view, there are projects for intelligent nanofertilizers, and this is one of that is perhaps most advanced. Fertilizer currently can be high energy milled down to particles of about 7,000 nanometers or 7 micron meters, and in this proposal for research, a particle of fertilizer would be encapsulated by a biopolymer that would contain a biosensor right here. The biosensor would be constructed from by extracting DNA from the soil microbes that colonize different agricultural plants, and in theory each nanofertilizer would be designed to respond to the soil microbial community of each kind of crop. The biosensor responds to the electrical signals from the microbes in the plant rhizosphere, that is the area of root extension. And in theory, the DNA-built biosensor would sense the electronic signal from the microbes calling for nitrogen release from the urea. So only the degree of nitrogen that is demanded, quote unquote, by the plant roots would be delivered. It's not clear to me how the biopolymer open and closes to release the right dose of nitrogen or another nutrient, nor is it clear how to me whether the biopolymer would affect the biosensor reception of the soil microbe signal for I want nutrition. Next we have, unfortunately, what I think is the current state of biomaterials, or excuse me, of nanomaterials in fertilizer. And this is a photo from the Environmental Protection website of treated sewage sludge called Biosolids by the EPA being used as fertilizer in fields. And according to the EPA, about 60% of U.S. agricultural fields, or about 3.6 million acres or 1.7 million hectares, are fertilized with these biosolids. This photo shows a very common method of fertilizing with biosolids, and there are several scientific research groups that assume that nanomaterials are already present in biosolids because of the proximity of the sewage treatment plants to nanomaterial manufacturing sites and a lack of regulation of those sites. The EPA does not test soil to determine what is in the biosolids. The EPA process regulates the biosolids to determine, for example, that the treatment plant is cooking the sewage to a certain temperature to kill off pathogenic bacteria. IATP and many others have reported both public and environmental health harm in the vicinity of biosolid fertilized land. And the disposal of biosolids in this picture presents further health risks if these biosolids contain engineered nanomaterials, since when you inhale nanomaterials, nanotoxicology has shown that this is the fastest route to developing cancerous lesions in the lungs. This is what they know from having put nanomaterials on the lungs of the poor rats. Now, this next slide depicts a 63-day experiment mixing a very, very low dose of nanosilver in a biosolid slurry mix using agricultural soil from the area around Duke University in North Carolina, using plants grown in the region. And unlike the laboratory experiments, what this experiment tries to do is to replicate as much as possible how nanomaterials are likely being coming into contact with the soil right now. This application, or this experiment, involves just one application of a bioslurry with nanosilver. Some agricultural fields receive more than one application of biosolids in a year. So what this experiment then attempted to measure, there were many, many different parameters, and I'm only just going to talk about two of them. One concerning the microbial biomass, the abundance of soil treated with nanosilver in biosolid slurry, and then the other is the production of nitrous oxide. And so here in the upper part of this chart, you have the control soil, that is soil that is not amended by the biosolid slurry. Here you have the increase in biomass that you would expect with the application of biosolid slurry, adding nutrients to the soil. However, there's about a 33 or so % decrease in that biomass when you add slurry with the silver nanoparticles in it. And then they wanted to do a control to see, well, what would happen if you had bulk scale silver nitrate added to the bioslurry mix. And what happens here is you get a reduction in the microbial biomass compared to just adding slurry, but not as great a reduction as the slurry amended with nanosilver particles. The reason that the scientists believe this happens is that there is the greater surface to mass ratio of the nanoparticles, so the nanosilver, accelerates the oxidation and sulfidation of the soil, and as a result, while it's somewhat predictable that you would have, it is predictable that you would have loss of microbial mass because nanosilver is a biocide. The second result it did surprise the scientists because here you have a measurement of the production of nitrous oxide, a greenhouse gas with about 300 times the global warming potential of carbon dioxide. Here, adding the slurry to the soil, you have an increase in the production of nitrous oxide, but adding slurry amended with the nanosilver particles, you have a huge increase, about 350% greater than the bio slurry alone in terms of the production of nitrous oxide. And what really surprised the researchers, however, is that when they put in silver nitrates in the slurry at a concentration 4 times as great as that of the concentration used of the nanosilver particles in the bioslurry, the bioslurry with nanoparticles still greatly outmatch the production of nitrous oxide. So taking into consideration a number of factors, IATP decided to call for a moratorium on fertilizing agricultural fields with biosolids containing engineered nanoscale materials. And these are some of the major reasons why we decided to propose this moratorium. First, we don't have a soil health protection law. Without that soil health protection law, there is no way of defending or much less enhancing soil health, soil biodiversity under basically a chronic attack by engineered nanoscale materials. Because the EPA does not do soil testing of biosolid fertilization, we felt that the moratorium would be a way of calling attention to the fact for the need of the actual soil testing rather than the simple dependence on process regulation of biosolids. There is no regulation of nanomaterial manufacture or fabrication with nanomaterials that's specific to the properties of nanomaterials. For example, the EPA does not know the tonnage of nanomaterials that are produced in the United States. There are about 265 different kinds of nanomaterials, perhaps a dozen that are most in common use. Some of these are metal oxides. Metal oxides are the materials of greatest concern, as Jaydee had mentioned, and yet we can't determine the environmental fate of these materials because we don't have even the most basic baseline information about their manufacture and use. There is growing science on the negative effects of nanomaterials on the soil microbes and the soil engineers, which would include earthworms and ants and termites, basically the value of soil health and soil biodiversity, although it's been estimated in the trillions of dollars in terms of economic activity, it's not clear how quickly the soil would regenerate after, or whether it would regenerate after chronic exposure to nanomaterials, particularly on the scale of use of biosolids in agricultural fields in the United States. There is a great concern about the extent of migration of nanomaterials from the soil to the food. Intense dosification of the soil with nanomaterials has resulted in the appearance of nanotitanium dioxide in the food part of the soil plant, even though the Project on Emerging Technologies has criticized such an experiment. The unhappy fact of the matter is that intense dosification of soil with nanomaterials is kind of a proxy for the chronic buildup of those nanomaterials that would be likely with biosolid fertilization. Finally, a moratorium would buy time, gain time to research if it is possible to develop an intelligent nanofertilizer that would enhance soil health, that would improve use efficiency. There are other kinds of research that need to be done to promote soil health. It would be a great thing if there were a scientifically informed law that would protect soil health and soil biodiversity, but right now we are quite a ways from developing that kind of law. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm very much looking forward to questions.
Great, thanks very much, Steve and Jaydee. I'm going to get through as many questions as we can. Maybe you guys can try to be as brief and direct as you can in your answers so we can get through them. If people have questions, now's the time to send them along, and we'll see what we can do here. So first question is more towards Jaydee. It says, if materials such as clays and metals have already been used for a long period of time without harm, then is the nanotechnology just a function of size rather than the element? Would, for example, minute proportions of these compounds already have been absorbed, reduced to nano state? And if so, then why is this new technology considered such a problem?
Well, yes, there's always been some material in the nanoscale. I mean, certainly atoms themselves are in the nanoscale. Some of what we're talking about when we're talking about nanomaterials are products that are deliberately engineered to be at the nanoscale. Some of these products or some of these metals have problems in and of themselves. Silver is a good antimicrobial because it is toxic, and it's toxic at all scales. It's not so toxic when we have it in our drinking glass, but when you reduce these already toxic substances to a really small scale, what they can do is actually get into your cells and get into the nucleus of your cell. They keep emitting, in the case of titanium dioxide or nanosilver, ions that some scientists believe are actually disrupting your DNA, and that's how cancer gets caused. So we don't want to have more of these substances that may cause problems in humans or in the environment deliberately. The research we're going to do on nano, though, is also going to help us understand why the non-engineered nano may be causing problems too.
Great, thanks very much. This is a question for Steve. Steve, you described the possibility of engineered nanomaterials in biosolid fertilizers. What about from animal manure slurries applied to fields? Is there a concern there?
I'm not aware of any research that's has looked at that issue. Presumably, if there are nanomaterials in animal feed, at some point there will be nanomaterials in manure and in composted fertilizer. But as far as I know, I haven't seen any research on that issue.
Great. A question about the moratorium call. Is IATP calling for an international moratorium or a national moratorium? And what other groups might be interested in that or have been interested in that?
I guess I should have specified that that's a national moratorium, because there are countries that do not allow the use of biosolids on agricultural fields. So this is a fairly limited moratorium. On the other hand, biosolids are a very, very cheap form of fertilizer, and so for farmers who are financially stretched, it's an attractive fertilizer option. So insofar as nanomaterials are unregulated in other countries, and you have wide use of biosolids for fertilization, I guess we would hope to extend that moratorium to other countries too.
Okay. We had a quick question about what E&M stands for. That's engineered nanomaterials.
Engineered nanoscale materials.
Nanoscale materials. Okay. And this is maybe Jaydee can answer this one first. Have workers' exposures who are manufacturing in the food system been considered, their health risks, in addition to consumers?
No, not enough, certainly, and even substances like carbon nanotubes. We have recently challenged the EPA, along with some of the unions, for not requiring enough controls for workers that are using carbon nanotubes, and certainly the Nanotech sprayers we were talking about. If you have workers around them breathing titanium dioxide or alumina or carbon nanotubes, that's a real challenge, and OSHA has done some of the best work on how to protect workers. It's their job, but they need more money to make sure that word gets out to all of the folks, and they've had a hard time making sure that word even got listened to by EPA, but EPA, to its credit, is starting to listen to what we and to what OSHA has been telling it.
Okay. Maybe it's a question for Steve, maybe first, and Jaydee can pipe in. What about nanomaterials and pesticides? What type of nanomaterials might be used? Are there pesticides on the market that use these already?
There are products that advertise themselves as having nanomaterials in pesticide, but there's really no way to test that right now because regulators do not require pesticide manufacturers to submit data on their use of nanomaterials and pesticides. The reason, again, that there is interest in putting nanomaterials, specifically nanosilver in pesticides, is that the nanomaterials are supposed to disperse the toxic element of the pesticide more effectively on the surface of the target pest, and so that's the that's the interest there. But actually, this is something that I haven't really researched. So that's all I can say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is Jaydee. All of the nanometals I talked about are antimicrobials. That means they're pesticides. When they are used as sprays, when they're used as coatings, EPA is supposed to regulate them. The EPA, to its credit, has issued regulations for how it would regulate nanopesticides. The Office of Management and Budget in the White House has held up those regulations for 2 years now. What EPA has done in the meantime is request voluntarily data from the nanosilver manufacturers when it can figure out who they are, the regulations that they wanted and that we support would require a nano pesticide manufacturer to provide that data to the EPA.
Okay, well, thanks very much for all the questions, and there are some additional ones, and I would just urge people, if they have additional questions, to contact the presenters directly. We are recording this webinar, and so we will post it at IATP's website in the next few weeks. And everyone who signed up for the webinar will get an email notifying you when that posting takes place. So I know some people weren't able to make it, and we can make it available to people who weren't able to make this webinar. So thanks very much. Thanks to the presenters, and thanks to all the great questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.